Let's Talk Small Business, the real talk, no BS podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to grow and actually enjoy the ride. I'm Mitchell Wilson. Let's get into it. So today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Matthew Fornaro, a business law attorney all the way in Florida. Of course, I'm sitting here in New Zealand, so international today. He's been in the law game for over 20 years, primarily helping small and medium-sized businesses with, I guess, all their business needs. Matthew, welcome to the show, and let's talk small business.
All right, Mitchell, thanks for having me all the way from the Kiwi state to the
Yeah,
sunshine.
that's it. I need to ask, what's the weather like in Florida at the moment?
Well, it's nighttime, so it was pretty clear all day. It was for us Americans, we're very snobbish, so we don't know anything about Celsius. So it's in the high 70s Fahrenheit.
I think it was, I saw a map the other day, and it's like one of only 3 or 4 countries in the world that actually still use Fahrenheit.
Yeah, we're very special in the U.S., as you know. The imperial system is here forever.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you're into law, you're an attorney, you've got your own business. I'd love, before we get into it, helping all these small businesses out there, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey of what brought you here today into your business and law.
Sure. So I've been an attorney for more than 20 years. So I kind of always knew I wanted to be an attorney, but I didn't know what kind of attorney. So I went to undergrad. I was a political science major, which means you're only qualified to do 2 things in your life. You either do politics or you go to law school. So I went to law school. I went and did a bunch of stuff, did a lot of intellectual property stuff. I actually have a certificate in intellectual property in addition to my JD degree. But when I came out of law school, I got into commercial litigation, like business disputes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I worked at 2 very large law firms doing commercial litigation. And I had the opportunity 11 years ago now, to go work for one of the 10 largest law firms in America, doing what I was already doing. But I had some reservations about it because I was thinking, career trajectory wise, I kind of plateaued, and then I plateaued again at another firm. And I was just like, am I going to plateau again at another firm? And then, not to get to all the weird political and weird business machinations behind big law, but there's a lot of weird financial politics stuff that goes into being in big law, particularly if you want to be a partner. You have to do like equity buy-ins and all kinds of other things. So I was like, well, this is probably my last opportunity in my life if I wanted to go out and start my own law firm, to go do it, because my kids were still young enough at the time where I didn't have to do whatever. My wife, who's also an attorney, was working, so I was able to, like, if worst comes to worst, we have her income to rely on. So I was like, all right, I'll go into business and start my own law firm, but what am I going to focus on? So I've been doing commercial litigation for my whole career, and I wanted to kind of bring that out from the big city to the suburbs, but I wanted to focus on helping like small businesses, entrepreneurs, and startups who I thought were underserved by bigger law firms and by, local law firms who don't really focus on that. So that's how I kind of got into the area of helping small businesses, entrepreneurs, and startups. And that's what I've been doing for the last 11 years.
I'm picking up on the point that you said that a lot of small business owners may be underserved by some of the bigger firms. Is that just because the commissions aren't as large for them? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's because, the matters are too small for like a big firm's, like wanting to look at like a, 6-figure kind of, matter versus like maybe it's a 4-figure matter, which they won't even touch. But for that's still, a significant sum, particularly for the business who's spending it. So that's why they're traditionally underserved by big firms, because they're always looking to help out big clients or businesses who want to pay big retainers and pay big money for legal things.
Right. Now, I've probably said this before, but I got to mention it to you as well. Like, coming from New Zealand, I guess, we look at the American TV, likes of programs like Suits and all the rest. Did any of that inspire you, or how close to that is the truth and how it works to be a lawyer in America?
Sure. So I can tell you that I'm not, because I deal with, real life law stuff all day long. I'm not like a big fan of fictional law stuff. Growing up, I wasn't into this is like way back in the day. I know New Zealand and Oceania got LA Law and, some of our other programs there. I was never really influenced by that. I liked the People's Court. I don't know if you guys had that in New Zealand or not. It's like a reality-based TV about like small claims court.
We got Judge Judy.
Okay, well, it's similar to Judge. It's like a forerunner of Judge Judy. Right. So that kind of stuff interests me, and when I was growing up or whatever. But like dramas, like you're talking about Suits or whatever, never really interests me. I can tell you from a real life human attorney standpoint of someone who's been in court many times in their career or whatever, that most legal fiction, particularly American legal fiction, is not really that accurate from an actual human attorney standpoint of someone who's been there. I will tell you that, I think it was a worldwide hit. Did you guys get Better Call Saul?
Yes, and it's one I haven't yet watched.
Okay.
I've seen Breaking Bad, not yet that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Better Call Saul, a lot of crazy elements in that show, a lot of really off the rails stuff, but a lot of the machinations and everyday stuff that Saul Goodman, the attorney, does, that's pretty accurate. That's a really accurate portrayal of the legal system in America to a certain degree. Once you start going into the wild stuff with the crime and the, the meth and all that stuff, that's not realistic. But the nuts and bolts and everyday stuff that he does, that's pretty realistic. And then I would say probably the most realistic legal movie that I've ever seen is John Grisham's The Rainmaker.
Yes. Matt Damon, is it?
Yeah, from 1990. Yeah. Matt Damon, Danny DeVito, John Voight. That's probably the most realistic movie I've ever seen about being an attorney.
Gives us something to think about when we watch them.
But the rest of the stuff pretty fictional. However, I saw, I'm a big as an American, I'm a big Netflix fan since we invented it. So there was a Netflix, and we get all stuff out of England because England makes great stuff. There was an English crime drama that came out about a year ago that was based on the English court system. And that was pretty, from my understanding of the high court in common law, which isn't a lot, but that seemed pretty realistic as far as the machinations of legal stuff goes. But otherwise, most legal fiction you see is just fiction with some minor elements mixed in there.
Hey, I love it. So when you're thinking of this, Better Call Matthew. Is that what we're talking about now?
Yeah, Better Call Matthew. I'll give you recommendations on what's good to watch as far as accurate.
Okay, so getting into the business side of things. What I kind of find is when you're speaking to lawyers in general for business and the rest, whatever the matter may be, they always come from a legal point of view, which is correct. That's their job. But as a sort of SME owner, the business decision may not be the same as the legal decision. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's pretty true. I mean, as part of my mantra of cliches that I overuse in the practice of law, I always use the term business decision because that's what I want the client to make, our business decisions, not legal decisions. I'll help the client make legal decisions, but I want the client to make good business decisions. So oftentimes good legal decisions are good business decisions, but sometimes they're not. So for instance, when you get into things you're in a lawsuit or whatever, a lawsuit, even if you're the plaintiff, but especially if you're the defendant, is a time and money losing exercise. So the best business decision always is to extricate yourself out of a lawsuit for as little amount of your time and money as possible. So is that always legally the best thing? Well, if we go all the way and have, a trial and win, that's probably legally the best thing versus settling because,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But business wise, you want to focus on your business and you want to focus on, doing things that make you money and not things that cost you money and not things that cost you time and cost you focus away from your business. So that goes into making good business decisions, which doesn't always align with making good legal decisions. So that's kind of my dichotomy between those two.
Like as a business owner for many, many years, I've been through that before. And, even though you're right and you think you should win or whatever the case may be, the cost is, I believe, is really that focus. Forgetting about the money as such, but losing the focus and having to deal with this versus your business can be a real cost because it's such a drain to go through that process from that side of you. I guess it's your job, but from the client that doesn't go through it a whole lot, yeah, it can be emotionally hard.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I, as an attorney, I deal with legal issues all the time. Like it doesn't, keep me up at night or eat at my soul or whatever. But when you're a business owner and you get involved, if you're in a legal dispute, not a case yet, or there's a lawsuit, it messes with your mind for, just to be blunt and lack of a better term. A lot of business owners can't handle the mental aspect of being involved in a dispute or especially in a lawsuit. And sometimes they become obsessed over it and it takes over a lot of their thoughts and, lives in their head. Whereas that space and that's time that should have been focused on maintaining and growing your business. So that's why, you want to try to get that out of you want to have a good mindset because when you're in business, you're probably going to get involved in a legal dispute at some point or another. It's just going to happen. But a lot of owners and a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of startup people just can't mentally handle the uncertainty or whatever issues that deal with the legal stuff. So that's why, some people just can't compartmentalize it and, put it away where it needs to go. It's just part of the business process. And that's why, making good business decisions, you probably want to get rid of your legal issue as quickly as possible. That makes as much sense as possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, let's talk about some common issues that you see, I guess, day in or month in and month out that come up in small, medium business.
Sure. So it starts from the beginning before they're even in business. You need to have, anytime you're going to get into business, no matter where you are in the world, it's pretty much common business practice that you need to have a written business plan before you start your business. And your written business plan gives you the who, when, what, why, where, how about your business. It tells everything about who's going to be in it, who's not going to be in it, how you're going to get money, how you're going to make money, what it is you're going to do, where you're going to be located, how you're going to add people, how you're going to take people away, your whole roadmap for your business. So it's essential. You should have it in place before you even start your business. And a lot of business owners just kind of skip that step and get into business. And then, they kind of do trial and error and figure it out while they go, which is not a great strategy because you should have it mapped out in advance. And then going forward from the lack of a business plan, a lot of people get into business, then the next step is they don't have governing documents. So here in Florida, in the United States, to start a corporation or a limited liability company or partnership, all I have to do in my state is go on to my state government Secretary of State website, spend a few US dollars, put in a little information on the internet, hit enter, and I'm in business. So, it's very, very quick, very easy to do, very dangerous too, because now I'm a official business entity who, can be capable of doing stuff. But I omitted start putting in my governing documents, putting in my foundation contracts or anything, just because I went online and did it. So a lot of people, like I said, they skip the written business plan, they skip the governing documents, and they just jump online and, get it done as quickly as possible. And that's going to lead to problems because just like the written business plan is your whole foundation for your business, your if you're a corporation, your articles of incorporation and your bylaws, or if you're an LLC, your operating agreement, or if you're a partnership, your partnership agreement. It's a more refined and legally binding version of things that are in your written business plan. And if that's missing, then you're going to have real problems, because if something happens to your business, or even if something doesn't happen, if you want to sell your business, if you want to bring people on or whatever, you don't have those documents, and you're going to need to add them later on, which is going to be much more time consuming and money consuming than it is if you had them at the beginning. So those are probably the biggest issues that small businesses face, is that they jump right into business before doing the proper planning.
I do know someone, and of course business starts off like as nothing, but it can turn into something quite big. And I do know someone that did this, went into partnership, then it got quite big. But they couldn't take any money out because one partner wouldn't let them withdraw the millions that were there. And that led to a court battle being stuck. That this person was fairly well off from the business, but couldn't access any of it. So yeah, that was a little bit of a loophole that, once again, if they'd spoken to someone like yourself in the beginning to get it set up right, these problems wouldn't happen, even though the business was really successful.
Yeah, I mean, that's because they didn't have their agreement that says what you do with the money when you make it, or if someone wants to leave, how how they leave or whatever. And if you don't have that in place, then you have a stalemate. And then if you have a stalemate, unless everyone agrees to everything, you're going to have to get involved in a lawsuit. And then whatever your jurisdiction's laws say about what the fallback positions are for business organizations is what's going to govern.
But look, it went to the High Court here, and yeah, a couple of probably hundreds of thousands of dollars later. So yeah, I've seen that firsthand as well. Now, what's something interesting and unique that you've actually come across from a business issue standpoint? Can you think of any interesting cases?
Mitchell, after so many years, there's a lot of interesting cases. And, there are things that would blow my mind 20 years ago are just kind of commonplace now. So, not to be a smug American or whatever, but I've got stories. So, let me think of one good one that's pretty quick that can help your listeners, or would be interesting. There's a common theme, kind of what you were just talking about, of the missing business agreement. So one of the things that happens often is that, when you're in business with someone, you're not necessarily a partner, because that's a legal term, but you're like a business affiliate if you're both shareholders in a company or members. One of the things is always someone, not to be, glum or morose or whatever, but always someone's going to die. And if someone dies, it's chaos. So, I mean, there's a lot of situations, particularly one that I can tell you, where there was a company that I represented the successor of one of the owners, who was a wife, who they owned. Her husband was 50-50, quote unquote, partners, but it was a LLC with another guy. And they had a multi-million-dollar roof cleaning business in South Florida. And the wife hated the business. The guy, her husband's business, hated him with a passion, hated his family, hated everything about him. And her husband was like, a nice guy, more tolerant or whatever. And he died suddenly. And then guess what? According to the law, because they had no governing documents, she is now in business with this guy who she hates. And so she won't even talk to him or whatever. So we had to try to negotiate something, couldn't do it. So a lawsuit was filed. And eventually, after a pretty, not that long litigation, but we resolved the case where they bought her out. But it was just a battle all the way, because she personally, not business-wise, but let her, feelings and emotions get in there, personally hated the guy and would not give an inch, or in your case, a centimeter. And, it was just a disaster. And that's just an example of, bad planning on the part of her late husband's thing. Because if they had an agreement in place, it would be as simple as, guess what? He passed away, unfortunately. We go to paragraph 10. Paragraph 10 says, I buy you out now. Here's the money. Thank you. And instead of that happening, it was just all protracted war of like personal attacks and like crazy online postings and all kinds of other stuff that happened because of it, because they didn't have the documents in place. But stuff like that happens all the time.
Now, in saying that, this is kind of business-ish in terms of law firms. Right before we got on this podcast, I said I just got back from an Ed Sheeran concert, which was awesome, poured down with rain. But during the concert, he kind of said, hey, you've probably seen a few years ago that I was being dragged through the court. And he also mentioned that, hey, look, we believe that all they were trying to do was for us just to give up and give them some money just to make it go away. But of course, he put his foot down and he wanted to prove himself right. You also mentioned this before, though, that sometimes people are just trying to have a go at you to get some money. How often do you think that happens, that people are just sort of seeing an opportunity and want to get some quick money?
Very often, I would say, more than you would think as, a lay person or a civilian, particularly here in America, because in America, attorney's fees are only governed, or I should say adverse attorney's fees are only governed by contracts and statutes. So if there's not a contract or a statute that's on point, and you lose, you don't have to pay the other side's attorney's fees. In England and elsewhere, the loser pays. So a lot of that is thwarted, even though like in Ed Sheeran's case, he still got hauled into court, in a Commonwealth country. But in America, unless there's a contract in place or a statute in place, there's no penalty to filing a lawsuit, even if it's frivolous, if you want to say that far, or dubious, if you want to walk it back a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff where people take shots at people, particularly when they know they have money, because of nuisance value, where it's cheaper to just pay you X amount of dollars to make you go away than it is to pay Y amount of dollars to fight you out of principle or whatever. And that comes back to us talking about making good business decisions. So if you're Ed Sheeran, like we were talking offline, one of the top downloaded artists of all time, one of the top touring artists of all time, you've got money to fight for your principles, where, you can, pay someone to worry for you and exhaust as much, whatever. But if you're not, and you've got real world issues and you've got, accounts payable and, employees to worry about, whatever, you've got to make decisions where, being in a lawsuit's generally speaking a money and time losing experience, and you want to get yourself out as quickly as possible so you can focus on what you do best, which is working on your business. So sometimes you have to pay blood money. In America, we have a lot of statutorily, not attorney fee based, but statutorily based causes of action for like wage issues and discrimination issues and disability issues and things like that. And a lot of people file a lot of those lawsuits against a lot of deep pocket people to, make something happen.
This is a bit of a tough question to answer honestly, but do people come to you with frivolous or dubious suits, and how do you handle those?
Sure. So, most of my focus, or all of my focus, is helping, businesses and business issues. So a lot of the dubious and questionable, type of lawsuits or whatever, like don't really cross my path, because most of it's like, whatever related. It's not like, let's, Diddy's in trouble, let's go get him, that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's people who come to me with like really bizarre, whacked out scenarios and stuff like that. And I just look at their stuff, and politely decline. I don't need to get involved in, something that's just bizarre or, totally out there or whatever. But yeah, there's people who try to float all kinds of lawsuits against people, daily.
Okay. Let's just talk a little bit about your own business now, because you were in corporate. You went out into small business. You've been in your own business now for, I think, 10 plus years. Do you remember those early days?
Yes, hard to forget those early days because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Great.
So a
What are
lot,
some of those challenges that you actually learnt from and you can remember now that others can learn from?
sure. So, you know, I was when I started my own law firm, obviously I've been an attorney for more than 10 years. I know about legal stuff, or at least, whatever, but I didn't know anything about business. I never had any business education my entire life. Even back to high school, I didn't have, or, whatever. I
Mhm.
never had any business education. I wasn't a business major. I didn't take any business classes. I didn't know anything. So it was a lot of on the job training, a lot of process of elimination, a lot of trial and error to figure out what to do. Luckily, during my early days, I was able to go to actually two free programs that were put on. That one was by this nonprofit called the Kauffman Foundation called Fast Track, and another was through Florida State University's Jim Moran entrepreneurship program, where I learned all about business stuff and entrepreneurship and things that I didn't know, that was, very helpful and cut out a lot of the learning curve and got me in there. But I can tell you the early days, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I mean, I was throwing a lot of money away, particularly like advertising and stuff like that. That was just,
The wrong things.
stupid. I mean, there's no way to say it was just stupid. And then, a lot of, gullibility and a lot of things where, unless you have the education or you have the experience, you're just going to have to learn it by trial and error. So, I mean, it's a lot easier, even though it's just a decade later, it's a lot easier now to start a business than it has been previously due to the proliferation of information and technology.
Hmm.
And, a lot of the learning curve is gone because you just can plug and play things and do whatever. So, my advice to people, if they want to get started in business and they don't know anything about business, is to, try to at least beforehand uh, get some kind of like credible business education or whatever, or at least, put together your written business plan and get going from there. But, no matter how smart you are, no matter how hard you work, no matter how good your education is, you're going to have a learning curve, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error and a lot of process of elimination kind of stuff.
Matthew, I must say that's very refreshing hearing this from a lawyer, because in my experience, lawyers know everything. And
Yeah.
so for you to be able to sit back to go, I know the law, but I know nothing about this.
Yeah.
I congratulate you on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. I knew how to do law stuff, but then, like, I mean, magically, like I always say, when I work for someone else, money shows up in my bank account every 2 weeks, and I, make my widgets and I'm done. That's all I have to
Mm.
do. I didn't have to think about, like, since we're Americans, and we're not cool, where do I get my health insurance from, or where do I get, I need professional, liability insurance now. I never had to pay for that before. Like,
Mm.
where do I get an office? Do I rent it? Like, just all crazy stuff that I never had to think about before.
Like a lot of the people that I deal with, because that's what we do. We help people in business. That's where we specialize in. And a lot of people like yourself, they're good at the thing. They're good at their trade, be it a lawyer or a painter or a mechanic or builder, whoever it may be. And so they set up business, but they forget now that, hold on, I've got two jobs. We've got doing this stuff, but then running the business. And so that's where we come in. But of course, yourself coming from corporate, before, when you needed this stuff, you just pick up the phone, call the HR department, or pick up the phone and call the accounting department. You are everything when it comes to small business.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
So a little bit of a learning curve.
things were so absurd. Here's like a absurd example. Okay. Even 10 years ago, okay, mind you, 2014, or more than 10 years ago, 2014, okay, everything's automated, whatever. At the firm I worked at, we still had a guy whose whole job was, very nice guy too, hard worker, great guy. His whole job was like being like the office copy dude.
Wow.
So, like, I didn't even have to ever print stuff, and like when we went to court before you would electronically file it, bring stuff, I'd just be like, I'd email them and be like, I need this or whatever. And then magically, like a day later, like a fully spiral bound notebook appears on my desk and, is all tabbed and marked and stuff like that or whatever. And, the first time I had to have like a big hearing on my own, I was like, wait, hold on. I got to put this stuff together myself. I don't even know what to do.
How do I change the ink? Where's this going?
Yeah, exactly. How do I, where do I go print this out and get it spiral bound at? I don't have a spiral binder. So, it's just going from that mentality to now, you're it is a big step.
Yeah. No, I love that. And a really good example. Okay. So this is just my inquiring mind. Differences between America and New Zealand at the moment right now. I noticed after your name on your website, it was Esquire.
Yes.
And I sort of scratched my head. I'm like, where does that come from? I had to Google it, to be honest. And a little bit of history that people used to use Esquire is like if you're a nobleman or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere down the track, lawyers in America, it must have been, took on that. So correct me if I'm wrong. Esquire in America means that you are a licensed attorney. Is that correct?
That is correct. Esquire means you are an attorney and you are licensed to practice somewhere. So one of the tricks you can see for, if you're looking at people in America or whatever who went to law school and then afterwards they're doing something, is that Esquire means, I'm a member of a bar in a state because it's all state-based, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm a practicing attorney. But people who aren't practicing attorneys or aren't members of the bar will have their name JD, which is for Juris Doctor, which is their degree, and not Esquire because they're not a member of the bar.
Right. Okay. Learning something new every day.
Yeah.
Now, I'll get this from the TV and everything, which again, we don't really use this word over here, but pro bono. I get that's the work that you do for free. Am I right?
Yes.
Do you have to do so many pro bono hours, or that's just your choice?
It is one of the things is my choice. Like those two programs, I named the Kaufman Foundation and the Jim Moran thing. I'm actually like an instructor for them doing their business law portion. So like I do that for free because it's like giving back to the program thing. So like that's an example of pro bono stuff. It's regulated by state based on the Bar Association. So, for instance, I'm a member of the Florida Bar and the District of Columbia Bar, and they both have pro bono requirements, but they're like one kind of on the honor system, which they're not like, being like, okay, send in your hours and show that you did the pro bono work, whatever. You just certify under oath that you did the hours in the pro bono work. Or two, you can just make a donation and not have to actually do the work. So, like if you donate, like however many dollars, like any amount of dollars, it counts towards your pro bono service. So it depends. Some states are much more rigid and actually like make you prove that you help people and stuff like that. But the two that I'm a member of are very lax. So, it depends on where you are as to what your pro bono requirement.
Well, I love that though. That's a good system about giving back. That should flow through to a whole lot of different industries, I presume.
But it's interesting too, because, one of the things about giving back or whatever, it's like if every attorney does, whether they like it or not, because every law firm, you have a trust account where you have your client's money in the trust account, and that's not your money, that's your client's money. You're not allowed to touch it or anything like that. But they have to be interest bearing, and the interest that gets collected on all the attorneys across all of Florida, all of that interest goes to the Florida Bar, and it helps run the Florida Bar, and it also goes back to various pro bono programs. So just having your client's money in a trust account, actually the money goes towards pro bono stuff eventually.
I like that. So I couldn't say for sure, but I don't think we have that in New Zealand. So if anyone's listening in the, NZ Law Society, good idea, rather than the bank keeping it because they earn plenty of money.
Yeah, no,
or it could go to something to help, help the country.
Yeah, every month when I look at my bank statement, because I'm, you got to obsess over the trust account because it's someone else, so you got to make sure it's totally detailed. there's always the byline on there of interest paid, and then boom, straight electronic transfer to the Florida bar.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about yourself, your journey into, becoming a lawyer. You've been doing this for 20 odd years. We've talked a little bit about, business decisions and legal decisions, that those answers are not exclusively the same. And of course, we've heard a little bit of those common issues in terms of, what comes up. And a lot of it, you said, can be solved about getting your business set up right to begin with, which is awesome advice. I need to ask you about AI and your thoughts, because I'm presuming some of these, let's say the larger corporate companies, instead of having a lot of minions sort of doing all the background work, the AI may take over some of that. Would that be correct in your point of view, or what do you think this is going to do to law in your industry?
All right. Well, Mitchell, I love AI. All right. I'm a huge proponent of AI. However, we have to discuss some things about it now that you've opened up the Pandora's box. So the thing with AI is that, you have like the evolution of the computer, then like the internet. Now, like the biggest technical change in history arguably could be AI itself. Okay. So, we keep hitting a new plateau of technology that gets proliferated into everything. So the legal profession is no different. So AI is great. AI is a great democratizer. It's a great source of information. It's a great efficiency engine. It's great. The only problem is, as with anything on the internet, it always has the right answer, but it also always has the wrong answer. And you don't know which one is which. So it's just like doing a Google search 20 years ago. Google something, it could be right, it could be wrong. Same thing with AI. It could be right, it could be wrong. So in the legal field, I use in my actual law practice, I can tell you, I use 4 different legal AI programs that are game changing. And I hate using that term game changer, but there's no other term to use. Okay. But the issue is that it's just like if I had humans helping me out or doing whatever, I'm at, the top of the period. I'm the apex predator, whatever. I need to rein in whatever the AI does, and I need to be in control of the AI, and I need to review everything that the AI does, and I need to go through it, and I need to approve it, and I need to edit it, and all stuff like that, which is what I do. A lot of people don't do that, and that's why a lot of people are in trouble in the U.S. legal system regarding AI. And I'm a big LinkedIn troll. I don't know how big LinkedIn is in New Zealand, but LinkedIn is like a great intersection between social media and business here in the U.S. And I love it because it's great, because everyone just goes on there and puts all kind of brags about that. It's great. So I get on my LinkedIn feed all day long attorneys across the United States who screw up using AI and get caught by courts and get severely sanctioned and punished for using AI the wrong way. And the problem is they're using it the wrong way because they're not in charge of it. If you're in charge of it and use it the right way, it is a revolutionary tool that will change your business like nothing else has ever changed it for being an attorney. And it's the same for all other businesses too, because there's AI for every business. And then there's AI for running your business and doing stuff like AI, SEO stuff, AI, social media stuff, AI, whatever. There's so much AI, it's overwhelming. You don't even know what to do with the AI. So it's permeated every business. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Is it going to cost people jobs? Yes, it is. In every industry, it's going to cost people jobs. Is it going to create new jobs? Yes. Will there always be people involved? Yes, because there always needs to be a person to press the button at the end of the day to do something. All right. So you got to be ready for AI and how it's going to affect your business and your industry. And for me, it's a tremendous asset, and I try to use it correctly. And it is a tremendous force multiplier in my actual legal practice. And it is a tremendous time saver in my actual business practice, the things that I use for the business tools versus the legal tools. So the problem is that, just like Google and internet searching before, it's just a more explosive version of that. And people now, like I said, they get the right information, but they get the wrong information. They don't know which is which. And I'll tell you, it's interesting because now I have clients who consistently, and it's getting worse as time goes on, use general AI, not specific AI, but like a general like chat, Claude, Grok, whatever. And they're trying to assist me with their legal issues or whatever by sending me their AI research.
Yeah.
And, much of the time it's no bueno, as us Americans say. And, you got to kind of curtail them and push them back a little bit. Maybe like, thanks for sending me this, but I'm still the attorney and, I'll take a look at it, but, whatever. And that's a huge thing that's changed over the last few years is clients self-help with AI, even though they still have an attorney, which is just nuts. And the pro se, another Latin term, pro se means people without attorneys. The pro se people who use AI unscrupulously is just out of control.
It comes back to what you kind of mentioned before that, when you first started business to now, in terms of so much more information out there. I agree. Like the information is out there now. The problem in business when people are trying to sort either their law stuff or this is the overwhelm. There's just, like you said, too much. Is it right? Which way should I go? And that's where I guess the experts come in.
Yeah, and with the AI stuff, it's just like, 26 years ago with the .com bust, okay? All these websites started out doing everything where there's too much of it, it couldn't sustain itself and it imploded. You're probably going to see the same thing with AI because there's just too much of it that comes out. And like, I was telling you, like, I'm a LinkedIn troll. So my LinkedIn feeds, I get stuff that's targeted for me for, being like attorney, small business owner, Florida. I just get inundated with stuff nonstop all the time. And it's crazy. And it's, it is too much information, but the issue is that the answers are out there and, the silver bullet, the magic silver bullet is out there. It's just, you have to find it and not get lost in the sea of stuff that you get hit by. So one of the things that I do, and, I tell people who like want to use AI or whatever is like, don't go by like what's advertised to you or like, oh, this looks great or whatever. Figure out what your issue or your problem is, and then figure out, can AI solve it or address it? And if the answer is yes, then find the best AI program or app to address it and use that, as opposed to, getting shopped to, to buy X, Y, and Z. Then you figure out you bought all three of them, all you needed was one. Well, you figure out what the problem is, you figure out what the issue is, you figure out what addresses it, and then you figure out what the best thing is to address it, and then that's what you use.
Hey, listen, Matthew, I really appreciate your time and your insights today. If people are wanting to get hold of you, how are they best get hold of you?
Sure. So the easiest way is just to go to my website, which is FornaroLegal.com. It's got all my contact information, all my social media, all my white papers, blogs, podcasts. It's all on there. So if you need anything, just email me or call me or reach out to me.
I love it. This has been Let's Talk Small Business. See you again soon.
Thank you, Mitch.
Let's Talk Small Business. I appreciate you tuning in. If you got value, hit subscribe, like, or drop a comment. It spreads the word and might just help another legend get their breakthrough.